Very good morning, everyone. I know this is a very difficult situation, but the current scenario is like this only. So use the time positively. The topic of today's presentation is physical properties of dental materials. Dental materials properties are classified into physical, chemical, and mechanical. These mechanical properties always comes in physical property only, but it is elaborate, and we will explain that in a separate class. So we will see only the physical properties of dental materials in this lecture. The contents. I'm going to discuss about what are physical properties and four physical properties which are going to explain in detail and what is its clinical implication, which I will explain after every property. First is introduction. What is physical property? Physical properties are based on the laws of mechanics, acoustics, optics, thermodynamics, electricity, magnetism, radiation, atomic structure, and nuclear phenomenon. So the property which is associated with dental materials are the three which is highlighted: laws of mechanics, optics, and thermodynamics. These are the properties which we are gonna see today. Coming to rheology, this is the first property. Rheology is the study of deformation and flow characteristics of matter, whether liquid or solid. So why is rheology important? We take there are a lot of materials like cements, impression materials, gypsum products, or like amorphous materials like waxes and resins. They are nothing but fluids which is converted into solid either extraorally or intraorally. So it is necessary to know the knowledge about these materials. Hence the property of rheology is very important. Another term to be known while studying rheologic behavior is the viscosity. It is nothing but the resistance of a fluid to flow. If you apply a stress to a liquid which is at rest, there won't be any strain produced. However, if the liquid is in motion, then there will be strain produced if a stress is applied. So viscosity is nothing but the resistance of a fluid to flow and is controlled by the internal frictional forces within the liquid. So how will we calculate the viscosity? Consider this like a liquid is moving between two flat surfaces which depicts a cement mixing between a glass slab and metal spatula. So if we calculate the shear stress, we can define the shear stress as force divided by area, whereas strain rate depends on the velocity and the distance between the of the upper surface of the flat surface to the lower surface. So as the shear force increases, velocity also increases. So we can get a graph between a shear stress and a strain rate. This is called viscosity, and this viscosity has a unit called megapascals per second or centipoise. Based on the curves depicting shear stress versus shear strain rate, we can characterize the viscous behavior of fluids as we can see in the picture. So let us discuss about these in detail now. First is the ideal fluid or Newtonian fluid. An ideal fluid produces a shear stress proportional to the strain rate. The viscosity is constant, and this can be depicted by a straight line in the graph, and this is known as Newtonian viscosity. Second is the pseudoplastic behavior. The viscosity of these materials decreases with increasing strain rate. That is, faster they are stirred, forced through a syringe or squeezed, the less viscous and more fluid they become. This is called pseudoplastic viscosity. And the third is the dilatant. Liquids that show the opposite behavior of pseudoplastics are dilatant and becomes more rigid as the rate of deformation or strain rate increases. That is, the faster they are stirred or faster they are forced through a syringe, they will become more viscous or rigid and resistant to flow. as we see in the graph. And one more category is plastic. These materials behave like a rigid body until some minimum value of shear stress is reached. This value is called an yield value or offset value. These fluids, which exhibit rigid behavior initially and then attain a constant viscosity, are referred to as plastic. A classic example of plastic is a ketchup. So when you tap or apply a shear stress of certain value, then only the ketchup will flow. And the last is the thixotrophic materials. These materials viscosity also depends on, or it decreases when there is increase in temperature or repeated application of pressure. So example for this is like prophylaxis paste, dental prophylaxis paste, plaster of Paris or resin cements and other some impression materials. So when it is applied over the tooth surface or kept in impression tray, it will be high viscous, and only when stress is applied it will become less viscous and it will start to flow. What are the clinical implications of these behaviors? So for dental materials, Newtonian and pseudoplastic behavior are more commonly encountered where dilatant fluid is rare. Initial viscosity of the mixed material often governs its ease of handling. So in the preclinical, when we give different types of cements to mix, you will understand different materials have different viscosity. And the rate at which the viscosity increases as a function of time is of equal importance, because manipulation becomes impossible when viscosity has increased beyond a certain point. So working time and setting time of material, especially working time, is very important and is based mainly on viscosity. So the next physical property is stress relaxation. So whenever a stress is applied to a material like crystal, like metallic or non-metallic, like amorphous, like wax or any other resin, it is deformed with trapped internal stress. How it is deformed is that it is change of atoms from their respective respective place, and it will be moved from equilibrium state to non-equilibrium state, and this results in plastic deformation. And by the process of solid state diffusion, by the release of thermal energy, the atoms will try again move to the own place and return to equilibrium. This, because of change in position of atoms, there will be change in shape or contour of the solid. That is, the material wraps itself or it will get distorted. So what is a clinical implication? So the rate of relaxation always increases with temperature, increase in temperature. So many non-crystalline dental materials such as waxes, resins and gels, when manipulated and cooled, they undergo relaxation at an elevated temperature. Such dimensional changes by relaxation may result in an inaccurate fit of dental appliances. And another property is creep. Creep is defined as the time-dependent plastic strain of a material under a static load or constant stress. If a metal is held at a temperature near its melting point and is subjected to an repeated stress, the resulting strain will increase over time. So metal creep usually occurs as the temperature increases to within a few hundred degrees of the melting range. So we can see amalgam creep. Dental amalgams contain from 42 to 52% of mercury by weight, and the melting temperature of this amalgam is slightly above the room temperature. So when a teeth is restored with amalgam is under a periodic sustained stress, like the patient is keep on clenching the teeth for a longer period of time, creep produces continuing plastic deformation. So this will result in destruction of dental amalgam filling, as we see in this picture. Left side of amalgam sees there is marginal integrity is lost, and this is because of the creep. There is another creep called creep resistance or sag resistance, which is seen in prosthesis like FPD. and it will be dealt in detail in the ceramics chapter. Coming to the next property, color and optical effects. For a dentist, there will be two goals. One is restoring the tooth, other one is the aesthetics of the restoration. So till now the properties which we saw are depends on the first goal, which is nothing but restoration. So the goal which is gonna see color and optical effects comes in the aesthetics. So aesthetic dentistry imposes severe demands on the artistic abilities of dentist and technician. Knowledge of the underlying scientific principles of color and other optical effects is essential for them to know. So light is electromagnetic radiation, as you know, is detected by human eye in the wavelengths of approximately 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer. So these electromagnetic radiation in the visible region interacts with many objects either through reflection, absorption, refraction or transmission. And these phenomena determine the opacity, translucency and transparency of an object. So how will you describe the desired color of a dental crown or cap to a laboratory technician? If I show you some color and ask what is the color, everyone will say their own preference of own description. So verbal descriptions of a color are not precise enough to describe the appearance of teeth. And if we consider some international definitions, there are multiple definitions and each definition is variable, complex and imprecise to describe. And if we write something also, it is subjective and does not clearly and unambiguously allow one to perceive the color. So to overcome this problem, color perception is described by three objective variables, that is hue, value and chroma. These are called as three dimensions of color. First is hue. This is the dominant color of an object, for example red, green or blue. This refers to the dominant wavelengths present in the spectral distribution. As we can see in the color systems, the color which is present circumferentially is called the hue. Next is the value. Value is also known as grayscale. It identifies the lightness or darkness of a color, which can be measured independently of the hue. Value increases towards the higher end, which is lighter, and decreases towards the lower end, which is darker. Value is also expressed by the lightness factor L, with varying levels of gray between the extremes of white and black. In the picture, we can see the color which is aligned in the vertical axis from the lighter, which is the higher end, which is white in color, and to the darker end, which is black in color, gives the grayscale or value. Next is the chroma. Chroma is nothing but degree of saturation of a particular hue. It is not considered separately in dentistry. It is always associated with the hue and value of dental tissues, restorations or prosthesis. In the picture, chroma is described by the color which is diagonally radiated outward. If we can see yellow color, there is a different types of yellow color will be there. That represents the chroma. So by applying these three dimensions of color, how will you do shade matching or color matching? In dental practice, color matching is most often performed with the use of shade guide, which is shown in the picture. This is a classical shade guide by the Vita. You can see this in every department like prostho or endo. While doing shade matching, they use this. Here we can see A, B and C, which are nothing but hue value. Like A represents red brown, B represents red yellow, C represents gray and D represents red gray, which is followed by values from 1 to 4. These are nothing but value. So 1 to 4 is the value which is from lightest to the darkest. There are certain factors which affect the color matching or shade matching. First one is the effect of the observer. Signals of color are sent to the human brain from three sets of receptors in the retina called cones, which are especially sensitive to red, blue, or green. Factors that interfere with the true perception of color generally include low or high light levels, fatigue of the color receptor, sex, age, memory, and cultural background. As we see high light levels, at low light levels, the rods in the retina of the human are more dominant than cones. We know that cones are the ones which are responsible for color perception. So at low light levels, color perception is lost, and as the brightness becomes more intense, the color appears to change. This is called Bizel-Brook effect. You people have seen more of optical illusion videos. So optical illusions are mainly based on this effect only. So next is the fatigue of the color receptor. If the observer keep on sees a red color for a long time, and then he suddenly sees a white background, the color tends to change. There will be a greenish hue will appear on the white background. So there will be fatigue of color receptor. And coming to the sex, females are like studies have shown that females have better color matching ability than males, as well as color blindness are seen more commonly in males than females. Coming to the age, there will be atrophy of color receptors are seen. So these factors, along with memory and cultural background, also have an effect on the shade matching ability. Next is the effect of light source. There are different light source in dental practice or dental clinical setup to for visibly attractive for the patients, or for different light for this shade selection. Daylight, incandescent, and fluorescent lamps are common source of light in the dental operatory, and each of these has a different spectral distribution. So objects that appear to be color matched under one type of light may appear different under another type. This phenomenon is called metamerism. This we can see in the picture. So what should be considered while doing shade matching? If possible, color matching or shade matching should be done under two or more different light sources, one of which should be daylight, and the same color matching should be done by the laboratory technician also. Another property need to be known is fluorescence. We all know that visible light comes under the spectrum 400 to 700 nanometer. So the other wavelength, which is around 300 to 400 nanometer, is called near ultraviolet radiation, which is not visible to the human eye, but natural tooth structure absorbs these wavelengths, and they will reflect it out. So natural sunlight, flash lamps, certain types of vapor lamps, or ultraviolet lights used in decorative lighting. We can see these lamps in any functions, or in any pubs or somewhere. These reflects these near ultraviolet radiation. The energy that the tooth absorbs is converted into light with longer wavelength in case the tooth actually becomes a light source. So this phenomenon is called fluorescence. The emitted light is a blue-white color and is primarily a 400 to 450 nanometer in range. That is, the tooth absorbs the near ultraviolet radiation from these lamps, and they will convert into longer wavelength, and the tooth itself becomes a light source. So this is called fluorescence, and it is of importance in aesthetics. Next is the radio opacity. You can ask what is it do with aesthetics. Obviously, it is nothing to do with aesthetics. X-rays come under electromagnetic radiation, so it is considered as one of the optical property. Coming to the clinical implication, if we consider some dental materials like restorative resins, they should contain some materials which depicts radio opacity, like strontium or barium containing glass is added to the restorative resins, or like barium sulfate or other heavy metallic compounds are added to the denture polymers. Only if it is a radio opacitic material, it can be seen in the radiographs. Like for example, if we see the X-rays, you can see the restoration done only if it is radio opacic material. It can be seen in radiographs. And in case if there is any secondary caries or any marginal leakage, you can able to easily identify by this property only. Thermal property, this is the last property which we gonna see under physical property. It includes the thermal conductivity, thermal diffusivity, and coefficient of thermal. So why is this thermal properties are important? Because when restorative materials are placed in a deep cavity, the heat should not be transmitted to the vital dental pulp, and it should be limited to prevent thermal shock or trauma to the pulp. In other circumstances, like patient wearing denture paces, they will contact the mucosal surface. So the transmission of certain amount of thermal energy is desirable to convey the sensations of heat and cold associated with food and beverage. Coming to thermal conductivity is the physical property that governs the heat transfer through a material by conductive flow. It is defined as the quantity of heat in calories per second passing through a material of 1 centimeter thick with a cross section of 1 centimeter square having a temperature difference of 1 Kelvin or 1 degree Celsius, and is measured under steady state condition in which the temperature gradient does not change. The SI unit of thermal conductivity is watt per meter per Kelvin. In general, the materials that have high thermal conductivity are called conductors, whereas the material of low thermal conductivity are insulators. So the dental materials which have high thermal conductivity are especially metals, and which when compared to metals, ceramics are less thermal conductivity. When compared to ceramics, polymers are less thermal conductivity. Coming to thermal diffusivity is a measure of speed with which a temperature change will spread through an object when one surface is heated. It is calculated from the thermal conductivity divided by the product of density and heat capacity by the formula which is given. So this is the table which represents the density, specific heat, thermal conductivity, and thermal diffusivity of the dental materials and tooth structure. Like the classic example which is given is pure gold, which you can see the which we can see the specific heat of pure gold is 0.03, which is nothing but 1/10 of the dentin. And thermal conductivity, if we see, it is 500 times that of dentin, and thermal diffusivity which we see, it is around 600 times that of dentin. So it is important to know the thermal conductivity and thermal diffusivity property of the materials which we use should correlate with the properties of tooth structure. If it does not correlate, then we should use some insulators, then followed by these restorative materials. So coming to thermal conductivity or diffusivity, which is important? Obviously, both are important parameters in predicting the transfer of thermal energy through a material. Because of the rapid changes in temperature that can occur during intake of hot or cold food or liquids, the thermal diffusivity is the property of dental restorative material may be more important than thermal conductivity. Coming to clinical implication, as I told earlier, that when remaining dentin between the cavity and the pulp is too thin, so we should provide some sufficient thermal protection by adding an additional layer of insulating base material should be placed above the pulp. So last is the coefficient of thermal expansion. So whenever a material undergo a temperature increase, there will be a vibrational motion of atoms. That means interatomic distance will increase. This results in increase in volume or expansion. The increase is described by the coefficient of thermal expansion alpha, which is defined as the change in length per unit of original length of a material when its temperature is raised by 1 Kelvin or 1 degree. This is the table which represents the coefficient of thermal expansion of dental materials, and this coefficient of thermal expansion compared with that of tooth enamel or dentin. We can see this inlay wax has the highest coefficient of thermal expansion. When compared to the tooth enamel, it is 35 degrees Celsius. So it should not be heated more than that. Okay. Coming to the clinical implication, a tooth restoration may expand or contract more than the tooth during a change in temperature. Thus, there may be a marginal micro leakage adjacent to the tooth restoration, or the restoration may debond from the tooth. So in the picture, we can see the dental amalgam. So whenever there is a temperature change, the amalgam may expand or contract. So this will lead to influx of fluid or efflux of fluid. So because of this, marginal leakage will be there, and the debond of tooth restoration can occur from the tooth. Coming to the assignments, there are 2 essays and 2 short notes, and MCQs is there. This will be uploaded along with this PPT. Regarding any queries, doubts, or feedback about this lecture, you can always free to contact me through this mobile number or email ID. So this lecture schedule is mainly for additional batch students and revision for regular batch students, although everyone has to do the assignments. And introduction was supposed to be the first class, but due to some technical problems, it will be coming in the upcoming schedule. Since chemical properties are not covered in this topic, I will add this along with, if time permits, I will add this along with the introduction topic itself. Thank you.